I was working at a financial firm in New York City with a bunch of very smart people, and I had a brilliant boss I much admired. I went to my boss and told him I was going to start a company selling books on the internet. He took me on a long walk in Central Park, listened carefully to me, and finally said, "That sounds like a really good idea, but it would be an even better idea for someone who didn't already have a good job."
Jeff Bezos is back on top at the top spot as the world's richest person.
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos. Bezos' net worth is just over $200 billion.
Your stock is actually up 70% this year. Is there one thing that you think is responsible for that, or several things? Because 70% is pretty good.
No, I have been lecturing. We have all hands meetings at Amazon, and for 20 years, ever since we've been public, 21 years now, in 1997, at almost every all hands meeting, I say, look, when the stock is up 30% in a month, don't feel 30% smarter. Because when the stock is down 30% in a month, it's not going to feel so good to feel 30% dumber. And that's what happens. Never spend any time thinking about the daily stock price. I don't.
Okay, so as a result of going up 70% this year, you have become the wealthiest man in the world. Is that a title that you really wanted, or not? Is it a burden?
I can assure you I have never sought that title. We would all love all of our numbers to be smooth lines up and to the right, and that would be terrific, but that's not how it works. Those numbers are output measures, and I guess you could try to manage your quarterly earnings very precisely, but I think personally that would be a mistake. Most of the work that we put into any particular quarter happened years ago. So it's not, there aren't that many knobs you can turn during a quarter. I mean, you can, but they're like eating your seed corn if you turn those knobs. You don't want to do that. And so people, I think if you focus on the controllable inputs to your business instead of the outputs, in the long term, you get better results. So the Benjamin Graham quote here is that in the short term, the stock market is a voting machine. In the long term, it's a weighing machine. And I think people are well advised to build a company that wants to be weighed and not voted upon. And that means having good return on invested capital and having lots of free cash flow. But if you said to me, if I said, here's a job I would reject, if somebody came up to me and said, Jeff, I want your job to be to drive up the Amazon stock price and just manage that directly. Now this might sound ridiculous to some of you, but many companies actually do this. They actually go out and they try to sell the stock. That's kind of the final output. And it's much better to say, okay, let's not do that. That's not going to be sustainable. It's kind of a silly approach. What are the inputs to a higher stock price? And you say, okay, well, free cash flow and return on invested capital are inputs to a higher stock price. Okay, so let's keep working backwards. What are the inputs to free cash flow? And you keep working backwards until you get to something that's controllable. And a controllable input for free cash flow would be something like lower cost structure. And then you back up from there and you say, okay, well, if we can improve our picking efficiency in our fulfillment centers and reduce defects. Defects are very, very costly. It's probably, reducing defects at the root is one of the best ways to lower cost structure. And so then that starts to be a job you would accept. You would say, if you're a reasonable person, you would say, I have no idea how to drive up the stock price. I can't manage that directly. It's not a controllable input. But I can make your picking algorithms more efficient. And that will reduce cost structure, and then follow that chain all along the way. That's what you do in all of these businesses. You want customer obsession. You want to invent your way out of boxes. You want to invent your way into the future. You want to be patient, and you want to have operational excellence so that you're finding defects at the root and fixing them.
You talk about what a lot of CEOs do in terms of trying to drive up the stock price, selling the stock. You told me something when we were outside extraordinary, which is that you spend 6 hours a year on investor relations.
And we do a lot of things unusual there. So, we don't meet with our biggest investors. We meet with investors who have low portfolio turns. So, investors that have, many investment funds have very high portfolio turns. They turn their portfolio multiple times per year. They're not really investors, they're traders. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different thing. But where you're going to spend your time and your energy is one of the most important decisions you get to make in life. We all have a limited amount of time, and where you spend it and how you spend it is just an incredibly levered way to think about the world. And so if you're going to spend time, explaining the stock or the company, really, we don't really explain the stock, we explain the company to people. You should do it to people who are long-term investors rather than traders. That's our point of view.
You graduated as valedictorian and you decided to go to Princeton. How come you decided to go to Princeton?
Because I wanted to be a theoretical physicist. I changed my major very quickly to electrical engineering and computer
But you
science.
graduated summa cum laude,
I graduated summa cum laude,
Phi Beta Kappa,
Phi Beta Kappa.
and then you went into the highest calling of mankind, finance.
Yes. I went to New York City and I ended up working at a quantitative hedge fund run by a brilliant man named David Shaw, D.E. Shaw & Co. I learned so much from him. I used a lot of his ideas and principles on things like HR and recruiting and what kind of people to hire when I started.
It's a very, very good, well-known hedge fund, and you were a star there, as I understand. What propelled you to say, I'm quitting this, I'm going to start a company selling books over the internet, and I'm going to do it from Seattle? Where did that idea come from? I
came across the fact, so this is 1994, nobody has heard of the internet, very, very few people. And I came across the fact that the web, World Wide Web, was growing at something like 2,300% a year. This is in 1994, and anything growing that fast is, even if its baseline usage today is tiny, it's growing so fast, it's gonna be big. And so I looked at that and I was like, there's gotta be, I should come up with a business idea and to get, on the internet and then let the internet grow around this and keep working on it. And so I made a list of products that I might sell online and I started force ranking them. And I picked books because books is super unusual in one respect, which is that there are more book items in the book category than there are items in any other category. There are 3 million different books active and in print around the world at any given time. So the founding idea of Amazon was to build universal selection of books. The biggest bookstores only had 150,000 titles. And so that's what I did. And I hired a small team, and we built the software. I moved to Seattle.
I mean, you told your parents you were going to quit D.E. Shaw, where you're successful, making presumably a fair amount of money.
Yeah.
And you told your wife, Mackenzie, that you're going to move across the country. What did they all say?
They were immediately and reflexively supportive right after they asked the question, what's the internet?
Right.
And so, no, but this is right. With your loved ones, you bet on them. You're not betting on the idea. You are betting on the person. And that was and it's one of those decisions I made with my heart and not my head. And I basically said, I don't want to regret. When I'm 80, now 90, I want to have minimized the number of regrets that I have in my life. And most of our regrets are acts of omission. They're things we didn't try. It's the path untraveled. Those are the things that haunt us.
And you were telling me that you had to go deliver the books to the post office yourself.
I don't still deliver to the post office, but I was doing that for years. And I was packing boxes on my hands and knees. In the first month, I was packing boxes on my hands and knees on the hard cement floors. And with somebody else standing next to me, kneeling next to me, we're packing. And I said, you know what we need? Knee pads. This is killing my knees. And this guy packing alongside me said, we need packing tables. And I was like, oh, that's the most brilliant idea I've ever heard. And the next day I went and bought packing tables and it like doubled our productivity.